Welcome. Let's just record this.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Let's just record this. Welcome. All right, let me just sort this out and I will be with you. All right. We're back. So last time I was here live, we talked about the Shekinah, an aspect of the divine feminine. Today we are going to talk about or commune with Lilith, Lily. And some of you may know her, some of you may not. Some of you may think you know her. All right. So we have all the streams going. So if you're watching from TikTok or Facebook, the live will be kept on my YouTube page. So if you want to come back, you can go to my YouTube page. All right, so Lilith, Lily, one of the three hovers. There's three aspects of the divine feminine, or that feminine energy. And today we're going to look at some of her readings, some of her information, so that you can maybe you'll find a piece that's interesting and you want to know more, so you can go and look it up, or you can ask me a question, or you can say, next time you come on, can you go deeper into this area? So Lilith, the first refusal. So I'm going to be touching into my research, but also my direct experience as a mystic with these energies. So I'm calling her the first refusal, but I actually, so we're writing a show, it's called Threshold, and you may hear about it and you may not, but she's one of the archetypes in there, and she's the protector. I see her role, and when I think about it, I feel great love because of her role and the misunderstanding of the great divine feminine or mother energies. So I'm going to go through some of there's some biblical stuff, scriptural stuff, stories of what's been documented around her. Then I'm going to go into the mystical understanding, and then what I call the body literacy, or the consciousness literacy aspect of how this is relevant to you, right? Because all of these matriarchs and feminine energies, so sometimes it'll be a matriarch, sometimes it'll be an energy like Lilith, that is showing you and teaching you. There's teachings to each one. So on some of these lives I've said, Lilith's teaching is that the body is holy. So we're going to go into that. So say g'day wherever you're watching from, and let's get started. I'm Cynthia, by the way. I'm assuming you know because you're watching. I'm a mystic, I'm a medicine woman, I'm also a minister of unconditional love, and these feminine energies have guided me for over 20 years, showing me, teaching me, and I share it. Okay, so what I'm touching into is from my research and texts that I've been writing based on like I said, the direct experience, but also my research. Okay, So let's start with a guiding question that you can sort of hold as, you know, as we go through this, if you continue to watch and get the whole story, or if I start going into biblical texts and sacred texts and whatnot, and it repulses you or puts you off and you don't stay, then so be it. But just know that I'm going through that so that you can get an idea of, I guess, the lies or the strategies or the ways of knowing that have corrupted the ability to have both the unconditional love, so the love and fear together. That paradox is unconditional love. When I talked 2 days ago about the Shekinah, or another aspect of the presence, the divine presence, the divine feminine presence in the world, or the divine face of God in the world, which is the feminine presence, right? In some traditions called the Shekinah, known for under different names. But anyway, we talked about that the other day. All of these energies need to come together for the repair or the, a lot of people are waiting for the return of the Messiah, right? The Savior, those sorts of things, redemption, right? This is all connected, but it's a way of, that I've been shown, that has been suppressed. So really this is the suppression and unveiling of that suppressed information. So anyway, I'm going to get going and get into some of these traditional readings. So bear with me, because after the traditional readings, we get to the mystical readings and the more contemporary, or, my work in the world, which has been guided by these energies. Okay, so Lilith is not in the Bible. And when I say Bible, there's many different Bibles. So we could say New Testament, Old Testament, right? She's not there by name, not even as character. Her name appears exactly once, right? In Isaiah 34:14, I believe, as Lilith. Lilith. There's a lot of traditions that will not say her name, or they'll say Lily. Just interesting that both my grandparents have Lilith in their names. And one was named Mary as well. But anyway, that's beside the point, but I find it interesting that my work in the world is with the Great Mother, and the knowing of that energy, so that we can actually understand the spiritual path, or your human path, because everything is spiritual. So your human evolution, your conscious evolution, right? Without some of this knowing and relationship, you are just spinning. You're spinning. Okay. So she's named in Isaiah as Lilith. Lilith. Other translations, or other ways that she's often translated as like a screeching owl, or the night creature. Okay, the context is desolation oracle. So most translations don't even capitalize the name, which is important in sacred texts, but I'm not going to go into that. So everything else we know about Lilith comes from later sources. Okay, the tradition has always been ambivalent about her. Do you know of the three hovers? In Christian understanding, one of them is Eve, or even the two Eves. Okay, so there's the three feminine energies, right? The three hovers. So this connects into that and gives you a bit of an understanding. But this is why majority of you won't know this information, because when you read it, it's been suppressed and changed, and there's layers. And I've got a lot of the layers which I'm writing about. So when it's ready, I'll let you know. But I'm going to share what I can in bits and pieces, and hopefully it's enlightening or illuminating to you, or at least give you information to start to question. I'm never going to tell you what to believe, right? My job isn't to tell you what to believe. My role is, because I have this connection and I'm guided, that I share it with you. That's it. Okay. So going through these sources and getting the layers, right? Most of the tradition has been ambivalent about her, but not even her, all the matriarchs and prophetess, all the women, basically, all the matriarchs. So if you want to know more about that, let me know, because I have over 80 of the matriarchs, and I'm going to put it together at some point, but I'm going to just share as we go. So we've done a couple so far. We've done Shekinah and today's Lilith, but we're only touching the tip of the iceberg. But you need to have a bit of an understanding to be able to go deeper into these other aspects of different sacred texts, because their stories are minimized and you won't understand them without the eyes to see, the ears to hear, right? So there's something called the alpha. Well, it's spelled alphabet, but it's alphabet of Ben Sira. It's a medieval text, right? And the text is probably 8th to 10th century, right? And I'm going to leave out all the academic stuff, but it's where the familiar story first appears, right? God creates Adam and Eve in these scriptures, okay? So we can go into other ones, and I do that in our other circles. We talk about, different traditions, but today we're just staying with basically a handful of sacred texts, which are Torah, Zohar, Old Testament, New Testament, with a little bit of New Testament. That comes in a bit later. But so Adam and Eve from the same earth, right? Adam and Eve from the same earth. Okay, but remember I said the three hovers. Hover is Eve, but there's 3 different types of feminine, right? So they're lumped into, in Christianity, one as Eve, mother of all living, right? But there are 3 aspects to it. So Lilith is one of them. Lilith is one of them. But anyway, God creates Adam and Eve from the same earth at the same moment. It's interesting because I watched he was a chaplain, an army chaplain actually, and he was debating or talking to some guys that were out front of his gym. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It was interesting because they were debating whether humanity comes from Eve. It was quite interesting. Anyway, so there's a lot of different ways of knowing out there, and the confusion is there to prevent you knowing your own power, prevent you from knowing that you have all that you need within, right? The 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 face of God in the world is within you, right? So those of you that are into Jesus, that was Jesus' teaching too. One of the main teachings, right? It's within you. Okay? So if we're just going out, we're missing the point, which is sin, right? Those of you that are religious and whatnot, you don't have to be. You can be from anywhere, have no belief, don't know what to believe, right? Belief comes from somewhere. Everything you believe comes from someone else. So I'm about going, what's true for you? Because when you just go, oh, I believe this, I'm going to ask you, where does it come from? Where's the meaning making come from? Right? So I give you ways to think and find your own ways of knowing, because I'm not going to tell you one way, right? I'm going to give you multiple stories because I see them all. Okay? I see them all. So I attempt, I do my best to bring it into ways that you can start to perceive, if not have a direct experience for yourself, because that's what a mystic does. Okay? So anyway, today we're going into a little bit of the story. So Lilith, right? Adam and Lilith. It's not Adam and Eve. Lilith is one of the three that creates, always makes up the whole of the divine feminine. Okay? Have you heard that before? Let me know if you've heard that before. Because this is what I was shown, not what I was told. So Lilith refuses, this is the general story. Lilith refuses to lie beneath Adam during intimacy. These are energies, they're not people, right? Anyway, so Adam insists on her submission. Lilith pronounces the ineffable name of God and flies away. Okay, so God sends 3 angels after her. This is just one story, so bear with me. Senoi, Senoi, I think it's pronounced, and Semengeloff. I don't know how to pronounce them, something like that, okay? She refuses to return. She takes up residence by the Red Sea, which is interesting because when we get to Miriam and some of the other matriarchs that are said to have basically very little to do with anything, have everything to do with everything, right? Miriam, Esther, all of these other matriarchs, right? So this is why I'm telling you about these 2 energies before we get into many of the others. And these are just ways of being able to see the teachings in a way that you, particularly if you're feminine in a feminine body, can and are included, right? And have so much magnificence. If you're feminine in a masculine body, you it doesn't matter what your body is, but if you don't recognize the body as a vessel, that's where you're not fully stepping into your magnificent, your power here as a human, right? It's a blessing to be a human on this earth. So we get into that in a moment. I keep digressing off the stories. So she takes up residence by the Red Sea. That's where I got distracted because I was thinking of Miriam, right? And the crossing of the Red Sea and, 40 years in the desert, blah, blah, right? So Lilith becomes, and in the folklore that follows, a demoness or threatens the mothers and infants. So let me know in the chat how you understand Lilith. Have you heard of her as the one that eats children, or is some sort of reptilian or reptile or snake or whatever, right? It's going to be something like that. Or, I mean, you may not have heard of her at all, okay? If you have, it's probably in the negative stance. Maybe as a seductress who drains men, or the dark bride of the night, or like I said earlier, the screeching owl at night and things like that. Okay. So in Jewish tradition, um, in the alphabet of Ben Shira, many rabbis considered that energy apocalyptic, right? But the Lilith story escaped its original container and took on its own life. So by medieval period, Lilith, people were wearing amulets. Do you know what an amulet is? Like um, pendants, jewelry, particular imagery, um, basically to ward her off. Or also when women are having their children, they were protected against her, right? There's all this fear. So the fierce feminine had become the enemy of the feminine herself. The fierce feminine had become the enemy of the feminine herself, right? I'm telling you, everything you thought, if you, it's like my students, I just say, everything you feel, you believe to be true, flip it and switch it, and then look at it again. And I'm sure many of you looking out in the world right now can see that a lot of that is the case, right? What you thought was true is now showing you the reverse and the flip, right? So Christian tradition largely erased her. And when I say her, not just Lilith, we could say all the hers, all the she's, you know? And we see it in the world today. We've seen it for over 3,000 years, the erasure of the feminine. Not necessarily a woman in the world, but because of the erasure of the language, of the teachings, of the even the representation, the imagery of women, right? Goddesses, prophetess, oracles, whatnot. It filters into the world. It filters into the world. Okay? So when she appears at all in Christian sources, it's as a figure of folklore or something conflated with the serpent of Eden. Sometimes with the women of Revelation, so which are the matriarchs and prophetess, right? She has no scriptural standing in either tradition. If we look at the feminist reclamation of the 20th century, they restored her a little, but she's still flattened, right? She's still been flattened. So in 72, the Midrash, it was called The Coming of Lilith, reimagined her as Eve's sister rather than her enemy, which is in some ways, if you look at the three energies of the whole divine feminine, so there's the three drops, drop into the world, outside of the world. So the holy no was Lilith. She didn't enter the world as such, and that's the separation, because there's the drop of the middle Eve, or the middle Hava, and the Shekinah energy, which is the feminine aspect of God in the world, went into exile with Eve. So there's these three levels, and two of them we have access to. But the reunification of those three is important, so that then the whole feminine, divine feminine, can be with the divine masculine in its entirety, right? We're always talking about masculine, feminine, and it's like, yes, but the fracturing of the feminine needs the repair for that full unification. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, all of this relates because my profession for, 20 over 20 years now has been looking at trauma and trauma therapy and how talk therapies don't work and how we need to bring in the body and the felt sense. The feminine aspects have shown me that. And what they've shown me lately over the last few years, which is what I've been doing my PhD on, is that the feminine aspects link with the nervous system, right? So you can go look at it in attachment theory. So I was just looking at the chat. Attachment theory, right? When we're looking at attachment theory, and I'm well trained professionally in that because it links to the nervous system and trauma. Okay, when we look at the spiritual aspects, it all overlays. So my work in the world is all of it: attachment, trauma, the masculine, feminine, the spirituality, the energies, the energetics, right? I'm an advanced energy practitioner, but how I work with the energy now is through what I'm talking about, because it's beyond what I call energy medicine first aid, which is, what I can teach you to do for yourself, or, we can look at making you feel better. But what is the true reclamation is you having a direct relationship with that within yourself. And that's the magnificence of the human conscious evolution. You have that power. So you may want to, there's, I don't, especially on TikTok, because I'm fairly new to TikTok, right? I'm just learning. And so I'm just showing up live and doing my thing until I work it out. But, what are the sorts of things that you want to cause and create in the world, right? Because it all comes back to what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's get back to the coming of Lilith. So, the feminists, we had the feminists sort of talking about Eve and Lilith being sisters. And I understand that because, there is sort of a relationship of, they're a fracture, right? They all organism, so to speak, right? So the organism, even before Adam and Lilith, is what in some texts they'll call the Adam Cadmon, right? Which, how I see that is, it's an organism. Well, I say organism. Just imagine a being that holds all that you could ever know and experience within it. Absolutely everything exists within that being. And that is called the Adam Cadmon, right? It's not Adam that is sort of created from the dust. It's before that. So there's all these energies that basically come from this being, which sounds like God, but is still not God, right? So, that's a good point. Like, what is God for you, right? Or maybe you say universe, but then what created the universe? Maybe you have words for that. You could just say, something greater than yourself, but that's a lot of things. So I do teach spirit literacy. I don't have anything going at the moment, but in spirit literacy, I'm teaching about those different consciousnesses, that when you sit and get information, where are you getting that from, right? So when people do trance or channeling or even mediumship and trance mediumship and those sorts of things, I've spent many years teaching that. Why? Because as a mystic, we get access to all that information. But how I see it is it's different states of you, right? It's different states of you. I'm just reading the chat. Okay. Um, so I'm getting off track. I get excited. So both readings basically demonize there's the demonization or there's the heroic reclamation, right? There's these two sides of those readings. One's demonizing and one's saying, hey, you know, there's something else going on here. So it's still that separation. They tend to miss what the mystical tradition actually says about her. So the demonization casts her as purely destructive. The reclamation sometimes casts her as purely liberatory, right? Liberating. Um, and neither grapples with the more difficult teachings that Lilith is. Sorry. Okay. That Lilith is unintegrated feminine sovereignty, right? She is what power looks like when it's not yet learned relationship. So this is why all of this can relate to your relationships to others in the world. Okay. This is why how I see the world, everything is connected, and I can show you how everything's connected. So whether I'm working with you as as a relationship or trauma therapist or energy or as your spiritual director or whatnot, it's all there once you understand how the energy, because it's in there. So Lilith is unintegrated feminine. She's not wanting to be a vessel like the other Eve, right? She's outside of the world or outside of the threshold of this world. That's the threshold. But in your everyday life, when you come up against your growth, right? Just say, we say fear of love, fear of fear, fear of unconditional love, the three fear distortions, which are in fear literacy. And just by the by, if you want to do that, the first module is $1. So just go to my academyforconsciousevolution.com and you'll see you can get that whole module, and there's a lot in it for $1. It starts with an introduction to spirit literacy and fear literacy, which is in the umbrella of consciousness literacy. Anyway, I'm just throwing that in there. It just popped up. So when you reach your threshold, right, you're going to do something new, or you're in a relationship and your past, I'm going to say either your trauma or your attachment injury is being sort of touched on. It feels uncomfortable, right? So when you get to that sort of threshold or that window of tolerance in trauma, we talk about the window of tolerance. It feels uncomfortable and you want to retreat from it, right? In spiritual development, in advanced, in our death alchemy and those sorts of stuff, if you're really serious about your conscious evolution, it's a similar thing. You get to this threshold. At the threshold, or your death, not your physical death, a spiritual death, like a real one, not just a psychological or I'm in a new space. It is very disruptive. And many of you will see a lot of things that may look like, scary stuff, right? And when you understand this energy, you will experience that, even if it's like you're going for a new job or you're pushing yourself, to learn something, and it really brings you to, like, I can remember when I'm ex-military. I used to jump off buildings and abseil all sorts of stuff, and I'm scared of heights. It would terrify me. I still had to do it. I still had to jump off buildings, and that would widen my window of tolerance because I felt like I was going to die. And I stood in that. In fact, one of the times I had to abseil going forwards down a building, I got to the bottom and my legs wouldn't hold me, right? There was that much adrenaline and that much sort of fear, right? But as I kept with that fear, I built a relationship with that fear. I was able to do it, right? So you don't want to necessarily always be putting yourself in those situations, but there are times when that's just life. So when you learn, right, this is the core of what I teach is the paradox holding capacity, which humans can learn. We've lost it, but humans can learn. And this is what all these stories, all these archetypes, all these energies, all this trauma and attachment information and relational stuff is teaching you the ability to hold both, right? Adam and Lilith, or love and fear together for unconditional love, because you can't get to that threshold if you keep moving away from the discomfort. Okay? I'm sure you've all heard that in some capacity. Okay? Because all the modalities will talk about one or two pieces. And believe me, I've studied attachment and trauma. I'm not a trauma coach. I've spent over 20 years. My the the trauma gurus out there, Bessel van der Kolk, Dan Siegel, Pat Ogden, they're all my teachers, right? For over 20 years. It's not just like a weekend workshop or, oh, I'm going to be a coach and just, do a couple of weeks here or there. The trainings are 18 months each, and there's many of them. 18 months each, right? So it's in depth. So having that ability to be able to see the nervous system, understand the language of the nervous system, but also the mystic aspects where I can see, feel, sense, know, taste, smell, and hear energy. I can overlap anything and see the patterning of the human condition. Okay. So, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm asking you to question, what you've been taught. You've been taught to move away from the discomfort, to move away from fear, to get out of fear. And I'm saying, if what I'm saying has 1 ounce of truth in it, what would it mean to stay in the fear, to stay with the fear, to start to build a new relationship with fear? Because majority of humans have a toxic relationship to fear, and therefore they have a toxic relationship to the feminine energy, and therefore they can never get the unification, right? Because half of you will always be missing, whether you're in a masculine or a feminine or a man or woman or anything in between. Whatever you identify as, you're still human, I'm assuming, unless you're some dog or cat or fish or something watching in the background as you humans watching me, right? So, all right, we're nearly to the suppressed reading. So Lilith is the threshold guardian, in other words. She's not the enemy. She's the threshold guardian. So at the threshold of this world, but also at your threshold of your nervous system, there she is. There she is. And that's why when we get towards it, so in your relationships, in your everyday life, or in your spiritual life, when we reach our threshold, we get what I call yira, which is awe and terror at the same time. That's the capacity to hold paradox. Okay? And humans have lost that capacity. Why? Because we have been taught that when we feel or get scared, we have to get out of it. We have to do something to get out of it. What I'm teaching and what I'm sharing is the knowledge that if you stay with it, and sometimes when you've got a lot of complex trauma, right? And that's my specialty, relational trauma, complex trauma, right? Right? When it's severe, it's very difficult to do that on your own. And that's why, there are people that, can support you in that. But the rest of you can start practicing that, right? Feeling it. Not, my daughter actually said this the other day. She did a post because we're putting on this contemporary theatre about this stuff called Threshold, but she did a post and she said, feel the fear and do it anyway. And I nearly corrected her, but I let it go. That's not what I'm teaching, to do it anyway. I'm saying, feel the fear, right? It's a sensation in your body. And that's the data, that's the core information, intelligence speaking to you. And we try to get out of it because it feels uncomfortable. And it only feels uncomfortable because you've been taught and told that it is. Okay? Because there's a lot of things that you all do that if it had another name, right, you would try and get out of. There are a lot of things that we do, in the world that when we're in touch with our body feel uncomfortable. When you're talking to certain people, you might feel uncomfortable. When you're, some of you, when you're driving, if there's a discomfort, might be an anxiety or whatever. I've spent over 30 years. When I'm sitting in my old clinic room, I don't see, well, at the moment, I haven't been seeing one-to-one clients in person for a while because everything went on to Zoom. But people used to come here and they would tell me what they were experiencing, and they would use words like anxiety or scared or whatever. And when I would get the meaning, because I'm a meaning maker, I would say, okay, what does that feel like? Explain it to me, because when you say anxious, may not be what I say is anxious. That's meaning making. It's trying to get an understanding or attempting to get understanding of what the other person is experiencing directly. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, they were not experiencing anxiety. And when they understood and could rename it, they had a relationship with it, right? A relationship is kind, compassion, love. It goes. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're building a relationship, because once you have a relationship, a loving relationship, a kind relationship, you may just start with a friendly, or at least acknowledging, right? You're acknowledging that sensation, which could be a pain, literally painful. But when you're having a relationship with it, it starts to integrate into you. You're not getting out of it. You're not getting rid of it. You can't. It's about having relationship. Okay. So that's why it's so important, because of the way the world is, of the way the healthcare is, of the way you understand how you can or can't do for yourself, because of what you've been taught. And I'm telling you, just look out into the world. What's true? What's not? And I'm showing you ways, eventually, where you can get those answers for yourself. You don't have to rely on me or anybody else to tell you. You may need to learn the literacy, become fluent in your system's information, which is just the sensation. So that's what consciousness literacy is, goes into fear literacy and spirit literacy. The first module is $1. You will pay nothing else because it goes to a whole a school portal where there's a 2-hour class I did live that you can watch if you want to. If that's too long, I've done newer audios, breaking those down. So, 5, 10, or 15 minutes. If you don't have time to sit there, there's meditations there, there's practices so that you can learn what your body, what your system's doing. So, so you don't have to rely on other people. So anyway, I made it $1 because it's an energy exchange. The whole program is 397, but you don't have to do that. I'm just saying, hey, if you want to know what else, go and have a look. It's $1. You go into the school program, SKOOL, and there's a consciousness literacy. There's a workbook, an intricate workbook if you want that. I do have an app. I've built an app, but that's in the paid one. But for the $1, just go and have a look. Anyway, I'm just checking. I've got a few things going. So if you want the replay of this, it's on my YouTube. I'm just trying to see what my YouTube is, Cynthia Harrison. So you can go over to my YouTube. I'm streaming live on there at the moment. That's where the replay will be if it's not on Facebook or TikTok, or got this Zoom going as well. All right. So that's why I'm looking everywhere, because I'm trying to sort of acknowledge you all. But right, it's not a membership. There's no other payment. You don't you're not going to get charged anything else. It's $1, $1 American dollar. Okay. So if you want to go and have a look, if not, all cool. Let's get into the suppressed reading. So the suppressed reading, or the mystical sources preserved what the folklore erased, right? So there's the Zohar and the Bahir and the later Kabbalistic literacy, who speak of Lilith with a sophistication that the demon stories don't touch, okay? Thanks for all the hearts. I got no idea about TikTok, so I'm sorry if I'm, maybe you can teach me, but I'm just doing lives on TikTok. I don't know what to do there. So, but hey, I'm glad that you're here, and let me know if what's interesting to you. Okay, so we start with the creation account, the alphabet of Ben Sira, whatever its canonical, I guess, is the word status, is telling a story the tradition needed. So in Genesis 1, there is a single simultaneous creation of humanity, right? So we touched on this before. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. Okay. In Genesis 2, there is the sequential creation. Adam first, then Eve from his side. Now, so I learned Biblical Hebrew and a little Aramaic. Biblical Hebrew is very similar to Aramaic because I wanted to start looking at, so the information that I was getting, how that corresponded, like what is it showing me? And so I spent a few years learning Biblical Hebrew, which is different to contemporary Hebrew. So anyway, because those texts were written in Biblical Hebrew and Aramaic, right? So why I'm bringing that up is because it says Eve from his side, and in some readings it says from his rib, okay, right? And rib we think of these ribs, but rib in the Hebrew is side as well. So it was the tension was noted, right? So the Lilith story is the traditional resolution. So Genesis 1 creation is Adam and Lilith together from the dust, right, of the earth at the same instant, right? And Genesis 2 is the creation of Adam and Eve, the second creation after Lilith's departure. Okay? So many of you have heard of that. I'm not Christian, I'm not religious, so it gives me, I don't have the conditioning that a lot of people have, right? I don't have that religious conditioning. I'm a mystic, and I get my information direct, and then I look, okay, what are other people saying? How does that fit? Where's the distortion, right? So that we can share that and have other ways of knowing, right? So invite you to a co-host live with 2 guests. I don't understand what that is. So someone will have to tell me when all the co-host stuff pops up what that is. So this is theologically significant, I believe. So the tradition has a memory of first creation in where the feminine was created equal from the same substance at the same moment, and that memory wasn't erased, it was preserved in the Lilith story. But even as the story itself, it was a shadow, or it cast a shadow, right? So her refusal is precise. She does not refuse Adam or that being, right? She doesn't refuse the relationship necessarily. What she's refusing is the arrangement, the positioning that makes her subordinate when she knows herself to be the same. She was made from the same substance at the same time. Okay? So it's that positioning she's saying no. She knows herself to be sovereign. So her words in the text, the Ben Sira text, are direct. And let me see what it says. I will not lie beneath you. We are equal. We are from the same earth. That's what it says in the text. Okay. It's not a tantrum. It's prophetic accuracy. She's naming the theological truth. She's naming the theological truth that the male narrative cannot accommodate yet. I say yet. And her response when Adam insists, right, is that she pronounces the ineffable name of God. So when he comes at her, she names God, the tetragrammaton name of God, the name that few humans in the entire Hebrew Bible are said to pronounce correctly. Right? Lilith has direct access to divine speech. Direct access to divine speech. She's not fleeing the defeat. Hang on, it's making me do this thing. or it'll cut me off. All right. Um, so where was I? Divine speech. She's not fleeing defeat. She's ascending on the power of the sacred name. Or ascending, because she went out. She didn't come into the world. She went out, right? She said, no, I'm not going into the world. Like Eve went into the world. Eve wanted to know more wisdom, knowledge. She went into the world, right? Lilith stayed out of the world, at the threshold. That's why it's scary. That's why in some ways she represents what seems to be scary because we don't understand. But when you do understand, right? When you do understand, there's a great compassion and love that comes from that. So she's ascending on the power of the sacred name that only the most spiritually developed can even approach. So that detail, and I hear many pastors and reverends and whatnot attempt all these different names, and they say it incorrectly. So anyway, the Zohar and later Kabbalistic sources name her as the what's called a klippa, or we could say in English a husk, a shell, an outer covering. And so that klippa in Kabbalistic cosmology are not, well, some people will see that as the evil, right? But then they're not evil. It's the container that protects the sacred spark from contact or connecting with what can't yet hold them. So what I've been shown is that, so there's primordial light, right? Primordial light. So people say, oh, go light, 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 right? There's different types of light, like there's different types of energy. And I see the energy and it is all very different. And I can tell you what's what, right? That's for another day. The primordial light is beyond all of this. The husk or the shell that, how I'm going to explain it, is almost like a covering of the light. Because the first, let me go back a bit. And this may confuse some of you, but just let me say this. A lot of this is seeds, right? So if there's something that you're like, I don't understand this, I want more information. Yes, I've died a few times. I died physically when I was 10, when I was nearly 11, when I was 10. And so I've had death experiences, and I've also had my death alchemy, my spiritual death, my big spiritual death, but also my physical death. Anyway, I've had lots of death experiences. But my point being, where was I going? I lost where I was going. Oh, I'll just say that if there's stuff that interests you like that and you want to know, leave a message. I'm not sure when I've gone off the live. I don't know if I can on TikTok because I'm not familiar with TikTok. But anyway, send me a direct message and say, oh, I heard you talk about this. Next time you go live, can you say more? And on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching from, because I don't know what you don't know. And I don't know, like the more you ask questions, the more information I get, right? So, and also from, years of experiencing, and also, for the last 5 years, I've been writing, writing and researching to be able to bring it into the world in a different way. All right. So just ask me, where was I? The clipper, so primordial light. Okay, got sidetracked. Sorry. Primordial light. So think of there's the greatest light, right? And in the beginning, some other sources, but this is how I see it as well. In the beginning, so we can go to the science of the Big Bang, and I call it the Big Banging because it's continuous. It's not one big bang, it's just continuous energy. But there's that main light, and originally there was that first world, and that light came in and shattered the world. All right, in a nutshell, I mean, there's more to it than that, but the light, that primordial light, had to retract. And when that primordial light retracted, it left the void. And within that void, and this is where I was saying this a couple of days ago when I was teaching about the Shekinah, the tree of life and the Metatron cube and all these geometries, you can call them whatever. The geometries that I see in the field, I don't see anything in my sleep and all of that. I see it as I'm sitting here with you viewing, right? Eyes open, viewing, and I'll see it eyes open, eyes closed. Same thing, right? So the geometries that I see, and I've spent my life, I'm a visual artist as well. I did the painting behind me, which is the mother birthing the universe. It's upside down. These are her breasts. There's her head behind me, and she's birthing. Anyway, and these are all song lines. Each line has words on them from different people. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. What was I saying? The geometries. And within that void were all the circles. Now, the circle is seen as the feminine, right? The circle. The line is the masculine or the linear, right? So, there's the circle and the line, and we need both. So I say humanity or our life is the circle and the dot, right? And you might see that on some of my pages where I'll just have a circle and a dot because it's the expansion contraction, right? But it's also the mother and the father, or the masculine and feminine, right? It's life. It's the love and fear. So however you want to language it. So when I say Metatron or tree of life or whatever, that's just a name for the geometry or the system. Those systems are everywhere. It's just what name do you want to call, what language, what culture are you from? And so because I don't have that filter of a belief system, I believe that's helped me be able to see in all the other traditions. Not all, but a lot of other traditions. And those energies have come and shown me. And it didn't start with all this. It started with the Indian and Tamil, deities and information, Shakti Shiva stuff, and Kundalini, understanding of Kundalini, and all that spiritual teaching. And as I was seeing the energies and whatnot, I started to see, I got called around the world, and every mother energy looked the same. Every mother energy looked the same, and that's where she showed me, they're just different names, but it's the same energy. So it doesn't matter what you call it, what you believe, what your belief system is. That's why I say, whatever you love and have that connection with, beautiful. Let's just get your relationship with that really really loving, not toxic, and not missing parts, and not because you've been taught by a system that is teaching you fear-based, when I say fear-based, fear or fear of love, right? It's going to hurt you, or you have to get out of it or get away from it. Anyway, going off track, went on a little tangent there. But that's the husk. So going back to that primordial light. So Lilith, the husk, the shell, is surrounding or in front of that light. It's almost like I'm trying to see what I've got to show you. You know, you got a flashlight and you put a cup in front of it, right? That cup is Lilith. Why? Because humanity isn't ready for direct primordial light, because primordial light, aka all that is the God, because there's, you know, all these different levels of God. And even Moses says, your God. If you're listening, Moses says, your God, not my God, because Moses's God is a different God. There's different levels of consciousness, what you can reach, what you can commune with. And a lot of it is because the vessel that you are, the container that you are, that can hold, that's why I'm saying capacity holding, right? How much can your vehicle hold? I used to teach many years ago, I used to teach it like as in cars, you know, vehicles. And, you know, can you take high octane or avgas fuel in your vehicle? Nowadays they've got you know, electric vehicles, but you know, if you're a diesel or petrol, what do you call it in different countries? We just call it petroleum, petrol, anyway, diesel, right? You can't put diesel in a petrol car and vice versa. And if you've got a diesel and you pull up at a electric charging station, you're not going to get anywhere either. You're going to have the right fuel, right? But if you overcharge something, you plug in something into a different voltage, it will fry it. And as an and this is what I saw too, working with thousands of people over years, right? Directly, like my hands on them and the energy. If we went too fast or did advanced protocols, it was too much for them. So the kindness and compassion was to gently do it. In the old days, you know, back in the day when, you know, gurus and masters and whatnot would just bam. And if you survived, great. And if you didn't, great. Because it's just what happens. I'm a bit more compassionate than that. I don't believe that we need to harm others for their growth, right? You don't need to be harmed. And our energies over time are expanding. We have that capacity. You know, it's the capacity of your vehicle. But anyway, going back to Lilith, if you see that her role, so to speak, and I'm generalizing because it's, you know, some of this will blow some of your minds when you, if you really, you know, follow it, the whole story. It will blow your minds because it's it's the it's so far away from what is taught from when you were little children. And so, you know, I've learned working with, you know, relational trauma and whatnot. And I used to work with children. I would go to their houses and schools and all sorts of stuff. And they would, you know, I was always the last resort because they were so difficult. Like complex trauma is so difficult. But for children, because they can't understand a lot of it, but it's like building their capacity. So, you know, in professionally, we call it the window of tolerance. Like, where does, you know, is your window only, right? Is it thin? So if somebody says something to you, go out of the window. If you go out of the window, that's a trigger, so to speak, right? And your body starts to give you information. But if you're really attentive, you will feel what's going on in your body. You are getting the information. It's your intuition. Everybody's got it. Years ago, so I don't know if any of you know me from Spirit Whisperer, but I was doing Spirit Whisperer interview series over, I don't know, since 2016 now, interviewing all the mystics, mediums, scientists, all sorts of people. And I had this knowing that everybody could get information. So I went about trying to prove it. And so some of my research, it was over 3 years, and we did, what was it called? Intuitive Studies program. Some of you might have been in that. So let me know if you were. And so each one went for 6 months to 12 months, but there was multiple cohorts that went through. And I was basically just teaching them how to get their information. And every single one of them could. Some of them had never, they didn't even know where to start. So it's basically starting with people that had no idea what intuition was or how to do. And then in the end, they were advancing to, okay, well, let's look at mediumship, right? And I have a very different way of understanding mediumship. And so that's a whole nother story, but that's why I do spirit literacy, to start to teach people about these states of consciousness rather than giving your power away, and trance and those sorts of things. And all of this, it really overlays, and it's saying the same thing. So I know I'm saying a lot of words, and I'm sorry if I'm confusing some of you, but just take everything I say as a seed that has so much more to it. And if you want to know more of that little piece, I'm happy to share. I don't know what you want to know. So I just show up and share what I'm doing, basically. So anyway, let's get back to, so hopefully you've got a little bit of an idea of what that shell, or that clipot, or clipper, sometimes it's said, is this almost like a rind or a peel or a shell, right? It's the hard outer layer that keeps the fruit from spoiling, right, before you can eat it, right? So she's like that for that primordial light. Why? Because she took, so if you look at the stories or the metaphor, they might say the queen, right? Or the false queen, or the cohort, the consort of the king, or we could say God, right? Or the father, whatever word, I don't care if the words are words. She's the consort until the return of the others, because there's no merging of them all. Can you see? And some of you are just coming in and out, so you wouldn't have heard the whole lot, but there's no merging of the two, of the three, or actually of the four, because the three parts of the feminine and the masculine, right? To become whole. So she's doing her holding there until everything else has happened and they can all be reunited. But while she's doing that, she's seen as the demon or something that's going to harm you. She's actually protecting you from being completely wiped out, from this world being wiped out, if you look at it that way. So when we understand that shell or that clipper in that way, Lilith becomes, or her role becomes, so much more clearer. She's a protective shell around the sacred feminine sovereignty that humanity could not and can't yet integrate. Well, we could if we knew, but we don't know, and that's why I'm sharing. So you do know, and then you can, all right? She holds it from the outside until the reintegration is possible. And so instead of going, oh, demon, baby eater, whatever, why not just say, hey, thank you. Thank you for doing that for us. Thank you. I mean, it's a stereotypical sort of mother role, isn't it? We get no thanks. We get no thanks. All right. So it's a very different picture to the demoness of folklore. And the Zohar hints at it, So you know, um, I like looking at the Zohar. It's so huge, and you know, you gotta understand the mystical lens to be able to read it, or get it. But you know, you can go have a look at that if you want. But in multiple places, at her eventual, so tikkun means repair. So there's a her restoration. There's a repair. Okay, she's not cast out forever. She's not cast out forever. And now that's a hint. So those of you that stick around, so maybe follow me so that you can stick around. So when I get to the other matriarchs and I start talking about that, you'll have this as the seed so you can understand the others, because they all link together. They all link together. Now you don't need to know all of them all at the same time, but that little hint that she's not cast out forever. There are opportunities, and there are different matriarchs within the sacred texts that show you in many cultures, right? But particularly Old Testament, New Testament. So she's not held at the threshold until the cosmos is ready to receive her back. Her final return is part of that complete repair of what's seen as the shattered or broken world, right? However you want to label that, but it's really just the energies having relationships. That's what it is. Okay. Um, I'll just do a little bit more, then I'll get into the mystical teachings, which all of this really is, but the real stuff. So just consider what that means, what it means to you, or what it means every time a woman has been told that her no is selfish. Because Lilith is the no. Lilith is the no. So just think about that. Every time a boundary was called cold, or a refusal seen as bitter, or betrayal, or whatever, Lilith was being demonized again. So to be able to say no clearly is demonized. Think about that. Why a lot of you find it difficult to say no, especially as women, and you'll be demonized. So if you say no, I remember, actually, I'll tell you a story, personal story. When I was in primary school, and this little boy, I was a little girl, you know, was trying to sort of force me to like him and kiss him and stuff. And I was like, no. So what he did, and this is fairly common, when you reject or just say a clear no, they demonize you and tell everybody that you did all this stuff, right? Because you wouldn't, right? So I saw it all through high school as well. So you get a bad name, so to speak, because you said no. You held your boundary. Okay? It's very common. Think about that, because that's the Lilith. That's Lilith. The projection of Lilith as monster is a projection of um, unintegrated uh, I guess, fear onto the woman who dare to exercise it. So when you say no, the demonization is not about her, not about you. It's about the culture's inability to hold feminine sovereignty without experiencing it as threat. So if you just pop in, make sure you follow so that you get when I come on live next. I'm going to try and come on as much as possible to get through a lot of these, and also to just to see what you're all wanting to interact with, know about. So her name contains Layla, Layla, which means night. She holds the wisdom of solar tradition. The solar tradition, or the sun, the solar tradition can't metabolize, right? Night. So the patriarchal cosmos has been organized around daylight, right? It's so tricky because I like to go by the lunar calendar, but it makes it very difficult if you're in relationship with everyone else, because everyone else goes by the Gregorian calendar, right? And time, you know. So all of this stuff's connected to the feminine. So when it's forced into the night, night becomes the day, or night, like day has no room for it. Like the day has no room for the night. So she's nocturnal, she becomes nocturnal, she becomes feared, right? The dark, the night is feared. What are you afraid of? You know, when you say to little kids, it's just the dark. Why are we afraid of the dark? It's not the dark, just like light. There's light and dark, love and fear. What we're afraid of truly is the fear of the night and the fear of the day. So the fear of love and the fear of fear, not fear and love themselves. That's consciousness literacy. So again, if you want to know more about that, I've go to academyforconsciousevolution.com or look for the link, and it's $1 for module 1. The modules are huge, so module 1 will give you a lot of information for $1. Okay, if you want to do the whole program, it's $397, unless I've got it on sale at some point, which is 8 modules. But if you want module 1, just to look into just an introduction into spirit literacy and fear literacy, and there's some meditations and actual processes that you can go through. $1. So anyway, go and have a look at that. So she's not lost, she's waiting. She's not the hero, she's not the enemy, she's the threshold guardian. She's waiting, right? So if we go into the mystical understanding, the real mystical understanding is, so I talk about it as Givera and Hesed, which is parts of the tree of life, right? I don't have a picture here, but if you want to know more about that, I can show you a picture at some point. But Lilith holds the Givera, which is the strength, the severity, and it's unintegrated, right? So it's in an unintegrated form. And to understand her mystically, we've got to understand Givera, which is the left-hand side of part of the tree of life, right? So it's the 5th Sephirah, and the Sephirah is a circle. They're all the circles of the tree of life, right? You don't understand the tree of life. Anyway, you could spend your life learning about the tree of life. But so the tree, it's the left-hand side, strength, severity, clear boundaries in the balance of this tree. Gevura, or Gevura, I say, is paired with Hesed, which is loving kindness, right? And together they form the 2 arms of the divine. I say the 2 arms of the nervous system, the 2 arms of the divine. Love and fear, one that gives, one that restrains. Neither's better than the other. They're the 2 arms. It's like, you know, You say your right arm's better than your left arm only because, why? Only because society has told you as such. Because I'm left-handed, and when I was younger, they just came out of, if you were left-handed, older than me, you weren't allowed to write left-handed. You were made into a right-hander. But you can tell who's a true right-hander and who's a false right-hander or left-hander, right? And how the brain does all that. Anyway, it's how you hold your pencil and how your arm goes and all of that sort of stuff. There's mirror image left-handers. I'm a mirror image, so I'm ambidextrous anyway. I can write with both and I can paint with both. But my point being, left was always seen as not good, right? So you were forced to be a right-hander. That was as I was going through primary school, that was being phased out, right? So I didn't get forced to be a right-hander, but there wasn't anything really for left-handers. We had to there was a lot of things that we had to use or learn to use right-handed. Okay, any of you? Even when I was in the army, um, all the rifles were right-handed, so it was really difficult for me until the Steyrs. We got Steyrs, the Steyr rifles that you could change over to be left-handed. When they changed to be able to shoot left-handed, I was an awesome marksman. I got my marksmanship badges and whatnot. So whatever you think about that, it's just about left and right-handed, what's right and what's wrong, even in the language. Okay. So anyway, Lilith's on the left-hand side of the tree, right? Well, you know, the tree's a bit tricky to follow because there's no time space, and they can when you're trying to overlay the matriarchs and patriarchs into the tree, they sort of morph a little. So bear that in mind if you're really interested in that. So love and kindness, the two arms, because I've taught for as long as I can remember about the two arms of the nervous system. There's actually more to it than that, but the two arms of the energetic nervous system. So not just your physiological nervous system, you've got your energetic nervous system as well. So it's really quite interesting if you're into that. So neither is complete without the other. And a universe of pure Hesed would have no boundaries. So think about your own life. Think about your own life. Who needs more boundaries? Whose boundaries are too harsh? So in your relationship with other people, if you look at it in attachment language, right? Are you an avoidant? Do you get anxious? Are you dismissive? Are you securely attached? All of it overlays to this stuff. It's just a different language, but it's the same mechanisms. So anyway, we need boundaries, but are they too fluid or too harsh? Right? We need distinctions. So if we've only got love, for instance, everything dissolves into undifferentiated love. So a universe of pure Gevurah, which is the left side, would have no life, only structure, only law, only the rigid containers, without the living sap inside it, without the juice. So the integration is needed to get to that center. So if you know the tree, it's Tiferet. So you got Hesed, Gevurah, Hesed and Tiferet, beauty. And they, interestingly enough, and if you're interested, I'll go into it with the matriarchs. take on these characteristics to be able to teach you, right, what I'm talking about. So we could change the names to the matriarchs, right? I was going to say something then, but the AI summary popped up and distracted me. So Tiferet, that's where I was up to, wasn't it? Tiferet, beauty, harmony, the heart. Love and fear, Tiferet. The sixth Sephirah, the middle column, the balancing point where love and boundary are held in relationship, something beautiful emerges. So can you see, well, if you've been on this for a while, can you see, because if you just popped in, you probably missed a lot of the context. Can you see that just having one side isn't going to give you that? It's the two into one. Okay. We need her, but while we're like, oh, you know, we don't want anything to do with that side of ourselves. Anyway, so that boundary, it's all held in relationship. So Lilith's tragedy and her function is that her Gevurah is not in relationship with Hesed. So she is pure sovereign boundary. She is the clean no that will not yet be a yes. So think of it that Eve said yes. Eve said yes, Lilith said no. One went out of the world, one went into the world. And Adam's sort of floating around here waiting. There's so with the mother and father, or the masculine feminine energy, there's different levels, just like there's different levels of consciousness. It's different levels. So the woman, the man, the masculine feminine, the divine masculine, divine feminine, it goes on and on, right? So one went in, one went out. One said yes, one said no. So she's pure sovereign boundary. So she's just outside the boundary. She's the clean no. She's not evil. It is incomplete. It is incomplete. So I was going to go on a tangent of complete and incomplete, but I think I'll leave it there. So the Gevurah, without its dance partner, she holds the truth of the boundary, but the boundary has no one to receive it, right? But she doesn't want, or it doesn't want to be a vessel. So that not having any partner that can stand, right? That's part of what our work is. Our little human experiences are reflections of all of this. They're all just teaching us and showing us, but because we've lost the capacity to understand it mystically, we get stuck. Even a lot of the spiritual, I'm telling you, you know, the modalities that are out there, they're all great, but they're all missing this. They're missing the understanding of fear. Like the true understanding of fear and how that relates to you and your body and your system and how you are in the world. It's a big half of you. So that's why the traditions, particularly Kabbalah and stuff like that, will call her that shell, the Klipot, right? shell, containers that protect the divine sparks from a world that can't hold them safely, right? Meaning, so look at it this way. She holds the light, sparks of light, until you can hold them, until those fragments of light, which are, we all have a spark of light within us, where the sparks thrown forward in the world, right? Collecting the sparks. So we're a refraction of the story that I'm reflecting to you right now. It's the hologram. You could look at the micro story or the macro story, but it's the same story. It's the same teaching. So when that shell, that clipper, is disconnected from the flow of relationship, it becomes rigid. So think of, do any of you, are you up on attachment theory? Because you'll see this in the different types of attachment. The part that's missing in attachment theory is the relationship to fear. That's why fear literacy is imperative. So you really get the way that I'm sharing this. So you really get the, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. So anyway, if you want to go and see more about this, there's the $1 option to step into module 1. So it's $1. Jump in there at academyforconsciousevolution.com and just have a look. It's all me. There's no AI. It's a 2-hour live, well, it was live recorded class that you can watch at your own pace. Or if that's too much in one go, I've made new shorter 10 to 15 minutes. I think some of them are even 5. Some of the meditations and practical applications are like 5 minutes. So you can go through all of those. There's a workbook. It's $1. I mean, the whole course is $397. But if you just want to get a little sample of what I'm talking about within regards to fear literacy and your relationship with fear, your relationship with your body, your relationship, how you feel it, the sensation in your body directly, go and have a look. There are no other costs, and you don't even have to, what's it called? You don't even have to cancel anything, because once you've done the $1, you're in the little group, which has only just started. There's only a couple of people in there, I think, at the moment. And that's it. The only other thing you'd have to do is, if you wanted the whole program, you would have to, it's in a whole nother place. So you would just have to message me and say, you want the link for that. It couldn't be any easier. But why I'm bringing that up is because of the fear base in this, the fear literacy. Without understanding that fear is not your enemy, every other system isn't the full story. It's not the full story. They're all trying to get you out of stuff. And that's spiritual ego. Oh, and we want that, but we want to acknowledge our survival ego as well. We need to acknowledge both. We are the bridge between heaven and earth, right? Which is literally what this story is telling us, what these metaphor and sacred texts are telling us. But we've been lied to, so we do not have, majority of humans do not have a way of understanding it, right? You're looking through your lenses that were given to you by other people. So we need to start looking at our own information. And so some of you are asking me questions of like, more psychic questions. Once you understand this, you'll be able to answer all of those questions for yourselves, right? So, so that shell becomes a wall instead of a skin. It's not, you know, ephemeral is not the right word. It's not, you can't breathe, right? It becomes a prison instead of protection. So Lilith's sovereignty is real, but it has no home yet. Well, it does, but she's the rightful queen of a realm the cosmos is not yet built to receive her, right? Because the other work of the other energies need to be done, but her eventual, what's called tikkun, which just means repair, her eventual repair in the Zohar is her reintegration. So the eminences, or what are called sephirotic or sephirot, right, in the tree of life is not complete without her. So that final cosmic repair includes her return, which is really your return to her. You're acknowledging that she exists in the way that she exists, not as the demon baby eater. Because, like, look really who is the demon baby eater in the world. And it's not her. Okay. So it's not because she's wrong. It's not because she's holding what the tree needed and couldn't accept yet. Right. So, like I said, we have the three hovers, or the one of those hovers could translate to Eve, right? The three feminine, right? The three feminine, the framework that guides in all of this that I'm sort of sharing. So as we go along, the other day, if you were with me 2 days ago, Lilith is the first face of the feminine divine, and she holds the threshold. She is the sovereign refusal. She's the no, right? She's the no. And that refusal guards the sacred from premature admittance, meaning what I said earlier, that light, that primordial light, that if it came into the world would destroy it, which it has done, so the sacred texts say in the past, and that's why the light was retrieved, pulled back, right? And how it came back in was through the eminences, ratcheted down through the circles, the geometries, which in Kabbalistic understanding is the tree of life. But there are other ways of understanding that too. I'm just talking about that because most of you already know that, or have heard of it. In other cultures, it's called different things, but it's a similar framework, right? Because energy is energy. So she holds that threshold. And she is the capacity to say no when no is the holiest word available. No is the holiest word available. So all three are needed. No one of them can be or we'll say the Shekinah, or the feminine, the divine feminine in the world, the divine or the feminine presence of God in the world is called the Shekinah, or Shekinah means indwelling. So you can't have the indwelling of God without having passed through Lilith's sovereign no and Hava's or Eve's sacred yes. She's not optional. She's not auxiliary. She is the first initiation. and majority of you have been taught she is the devil, she's demonized, she will harm you. It's your fear of her that will harm you, not not the not the act or role itself. So thanks for hanging around. I'll go into a little bit of the body teaching if you want, and then I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. So body teaching, or the fear literacy, so how Lilith lives in the body as the no that wasn't allowed to form. So what we've been doing is going through, if you watch the whole lot, and it is a lot, but you can go back and watch the replay on YouTube if you want to, under Cynthia Harrison. And we've gone through sort of the different biblical teachings, different sacred texts, a mystical teaching or sharing, and this is the body or the fear literacy, which is more coming into the world. So she lives as the boundary that was called cold, right? The refusal that was called selfish, the departure that was called betrayal. She lives as the rage that has nowhere to go, right? Anger, rage that has nowhere to go. Because, if you say no and hold a boundary and then you're vilified, what do you feel? Because that's her within you. That's her within you. And you just say, hey, there you are. Thank you. Right? She lives in that rage and there's nowhere to go. It had nowhere to go because the body was told, sorry, I'm just looking at the YouTube thing. Gotta get it out of the way. Because the body was told what? What was the body told? The body was told rage was incompatible with love. Or don't be angry. Don't be angry. Say yes, agree, be a good girl or a good boy or good whatever you identify as. Right? She lives as the exhaustion that comes from being the yes the people in your life prefer you to be. Think about that. They want you to be the good girl, the one that lays down, the one that, or even if you're a boy, because you've got the feminine in the masculine, right? The one that lays down, the one that's subordinate, the one that is good. Many women carry Lilith in the body as a split. And there is the self that says, well, what she actually thinks. What she actually thinks. And the self that quickly receives or revises it and softens it and apologizes for it, right? You might say what you want, and we make it a bit softer. We don't want to be the demon. We don't want to be the enemy. We want to be liked. But that comes into survival, our survival ego, what we have to do to survive. Right? What we have to do to survive. We change it. We soften it. We apologize. Do you know the amount of people that, if you're in the supermarket or just down the street or anywhere, right? And you find yourself, if someone bumps into you, do you say sorry? They bump into you. They do something to you. and you say sorry, just start noticing. I mean, you don't have to, go off your head about it, but just notice where we are small and not saying. There is the self that says what she actually thinks without revising it, without changing it. There's the body that flinches at the violation and the body that performs acceptance so no one feels uncomfortable. Are you making everyone else comfortable? What's that feel like for you when you are trying to, I was going to say service, but make everybody comfortable? You're not speaking your truth. You're apologizing for your existence. There is that voice that tries to rise in the throat. You know what I've noticed in the work I do, and it's called IITT, and what I find when we drop when I say drop, it's like bringing something to mind and seeing where it is in the body, and the amount of people who get it, this sensation in their throat and their jaw and their tongue and their mouth, because they've not said and not screamed or not yelled or not bitten, right? It's one of the stress responses because, and you can't think that away. In fact, you can't think any of it away. You have to address it in the body. That's why I went into trauma therapy years ago. I'm a trauma specialist, complex trauma, relational trauma, meaning trauma to do with humans, human to human, not necessarily car accident, fire, hurricane, all of that. The most difficult trauma and information to integrate is relational trauma. And you cannot do talk therapy for that, because the first time you start to connect with the story, the part of your brain that governs the language centers goes offline. So that's why, working with children and adults, but specifically children, they don't even have the language. I mean, I was working with all ages, and I'm saying there were children removed at birth, right? So their foster families or adoptive families couldn't calm them. And there's energetic reasons for that, but there's physiological reasons for that too, because children are connected energetically, intuitively to the mothers and vice versa for a long time. So, and any removal of a child in infancy from a primary caregiver is trauma. So to calm that child, get them to sleep, get them to eat and all of that sort of stuff, to make sure they're healthy, they went to sleep clinics and all sorts of stuff. Nothing worked. So they would come to me, and I would put my hands on their little hands and their little feet, and they would be burning. And that's the links to the energetic arm of the nervous system called triple warmer. Triple warmer governs the temperature, memory, all sorts of things. My point being, those babies, infants, didn't have language, so therefore, how do you work with them? This is why I'm sharing what I'm sharing. because you cannot think or talk it away and talk yourself out of it. So IITT is illuminate injury, attachment injury, right? Transform trauma through the body. But anyway, so I'm just sort of linking in how all of this fits, because it's not just, oh, like just this one little thing. It all connects. So the body flinches at the violation and the body performs acceptance so that it survives, right? That's how we survive, like that fawning, people pleasing, or the shutdown, right? And so a lot of that, well, all of it is held as a charge, not words, charge, electricity in the body. And that's what fear literacy helps you start to connect with. So when you start connecting with it, that charge is dissipated into the system, your system, so that that energy is then free to be utilized in your life for other things. Okay? It's not about getting rid of anything. You've been lied to. You have been lied to. It's about relating to it and utilizing those resources for your life. So it's a charge. So fear literacy reads Lilith with care. So in the 3 distortion framework, 3 parts of the nervous system, 3 distortions, the compliance is love. A love pattern is often mislabeled as fear of love. So it's as if what the woman feared was love itself, if that makes sense, right? It's fear of love because however that, and if we look at attachment, however, if you've experienced love or been taught about love, most humans don't know what love is, just for a start, right? What most of us think love is toxic, really. So the fear of love itself, because we've been taught or we've seen or we've had experiences that have scared us, right? So the fear of love, it's usually wrong. So what we actually feared was love as subordination. Love as subordination. Going back to Lilith and Eve, right? But the body knew. The body knows. The body knew correctly that the love on offer required the disappearance of the self. So a lot of you have a fear of love because that love, when you're in your spiritual development, you get so expanded that you start to lose a sense of who you are. So you start to move away from it. That's a fear of love, a fear of your own magnificence, a fear of that you go for that job that you feel is beyond you, but so you don't go for it. You make yourself small because what if I got that job? What if I got that role? What if I, got my PhD? Or what if I applied for that show? Or what if? And that other side of it, the threshold scares you. So it's about learning to be in the discomfort of the threshold, right? Build the relationship with what that feels like in the body. Rather than fearing love or fearing your own magnificence or fearing your your greatness or whatever that is for you, right? Lilith's refusal is not the refusal of love. It's the refusal of a trade. Right? When women's no is pathologized as fear of intimacy, and there can be that, but when it's pathologized, the actual wisdom of the body is silenced. You don't know, your intelligence is distorted, or you're not even aware of it. So a lot of people, I'd say, I see their energy, they're a head, walking around as a head. They've got no connection to the body, right? The body was demonized. Hello, hello. So as the body knowing, so the wisdom, when it's recognized as discernment, right? We're going, what is this? Just saying, there it is. I feel a sensation in my body. Just even now, what is the sensation in your body? It's just information. I can feel my big toes are cold because I turn the heater off because it's noisy. That's information. I don't need to be scared about it. Right? If you don't know what it is, say it's a pain in the chest or something that, you have a fear of a medical condition or whatnot, right? You ask, you have a plan, you use your voice. You always check. But when you get to know that, you have a relationship with it. So as the body knowing that the love on offer, like what is that love on offer? If it's not love, what is it? Because real love doesn't require self-erasure. So many of our relationships, we lose ourselves, especially if you identify as a empath or anything like that, highly sensitive person, empath, certain attachment styles like anxious attachment, fearful attachment on the anxious side, that sort of thing. There's a natural or kinesthetic on an energetic level, right? Which is a superpower when you understand it, because you get so much information, but you can lose yourself because you have very ephemeral boundaries. They're not solid, strong boundaries. And that's okay, but are you aware of it? Because if you're not aware of it, you are more inclined, I guess the word is, to lose yourself into the other's life. So, there's multiple levels here, and it's, about understanding where you are and how these energies, or you could use them as the matriarchs or the feminine aspects, how they come in and work in your life, like how you see them, because you'll see it in your behavior. You can see which one is more prominent than another, and you can start to be sovereign within your own life. Polyvagal theory is Stephen Porges' theory, based on a lot of the newer psychology for trauma is based on polyvagal, but there are other theories as well. Names it as the healthy flight response, right? The clean, specific, energetically clear response. It's a mobilization. It's a sympathetic nervous system that that protects integrity. So without collapsing into dysregulation. So this might be a lot of words that you're familiar with, maybe you're unfamiliar with. I don't know. I don't want to, I'm assuming you know until you tell me. And then as we go along and we build our own relationships together, if you would like to, then I can start to break down what maybe you would like to know more about, or clear up if there's something I'm saying you're like, what does that mean, or whatever. Then we can have those dialogues, right? But again, it's like building a relationship with any of these energies, with me and me with you. And we can do that. So at the moment, I don't know what you know, what you don't know, what you want to know, what you don't want to know. But coming back to this nervous system sort of understanding, the mobilization of the sympathetic nervous system protects integrity. It's not collapsing into one of the dysregulations which link into the trauma or the attachment injury, right? Lilith's departure is a clean fight response. It's clean. She doesn't freeze. She does not fawn. She doesn't say, oh, please, Adam, pick me, right? She doesn't freeze. She doesn't collapse. She doesn't go, all right, I'll lay for you. She mobilizes. She names the violation and she leaves. She names the violation and she leaves. And her departure is your nervous system in its cleanest possible expression. So if you were here earlier on and I said, you know, this is what can happen to a lot of us, that when we say no, we're demonized, right? We're demonized. If somebody says, oh, can I go out with you, and you say no, they vilify you, or they tell everybody they've slept with you and they haven't, and you haven't. Or you say no to something in the family, so there's this family system, and you know, you always feel pressured to say yes. And then one day you just go, I don't want to do that. And the whole family will gang up. It's also fits into systems theory, right? It's family therapy, sort of systems theory. Everybody has a role in the family. And when one person changes the role in the family, so you starting to say no, changes everybody's role in the family. So it is a disruption and everybody will be slightly dysregulated. But that doesn't mean that you don't get to say your no or your yes, right? So knowing about this energy helps with all of that stuff. It's the clearest expression. So I told you earlier about the IT method. That's my framework, my method. It's illuminate injury, attachment injury, transform trauma method that works with the body in a specific way. So like I said, it illuminates, names the refusal, the distortion. So there's three main distortions, but it names it, right? The refusal that was never spoken aloud, what no lives in your body. So where you're saying no or not saying no, right? Where that's been waiting for decades for a language. That's why it's fear literacy. So I am literate and fluent in the nervous system's languages, energetically and physiologically. But you also get to become fluent in your own body's language, your own intuition, right? Then we honor the injury. So what's the attachment injury, or the, you know, the conditioned injury, the cost of swallowing that no, the years of performance that followed, right? So that's the patterns of behavior, energetically and physically, how you are in the world, right? Because you're not your behavior, but you are conditioned and coded by the world and the people around you, right? From early childhood. So the cost of that and that somatic debt that then accumulated, and then the transformation or transforming, not forcing a premature reconciliation, it's building that relationship, right, with those parts of the self, by giving the no its full voice. Or maybe it's a yes, but today we're talking about Lilith, so it's a no, right? It's a clear no. And the transformation is not that Lilith becomes compliant. It's that the transformation is that the woman becomes able to speak the no that was waiting. That's why there's a lot of energy in the around the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, the ears, the tongue, even the teeth. Often it will start down lower and it moves up, and when you really stay with the sensation, it will show you, you know, the information comes. What else do I want to say about that? So being able to speak the no, and only after the no has been spoken, and that may be just between you, it could be between me and you if you're working with me, it could be between you and that energy, right? It doesn't have to be between you and, you know, the past people or people in your family, right? Because it's the charge held in your body, in your system. Okay, so Lilith's, it's hard to say that, Lilith's teaching, which is what I called this today's chat sharing, the body's refusal is holy. That's what I named this. The body's refusal is holy. So the boundary is the beginning of the relationship, not its opposite. Right? The boundary, the threshold, it's the beginning of the relationship. So as you touch into that, what feels uncomfortable, that's the start of the relationship and your real growth, your real healing, if you want to call it healing. I think healing is thrown around an awful lot for, you know. So her teaching is that the no that has not yet been spoken is not cowardice. It's the gift waiting for its moment. And when it's finally spoken and it's clean and it's direct and it's without apology, and it's within yourself first, the sovereignty that has been in exile can begin its long walk home. So all the aspects of the feminine can start to come together, the yes and the no, into the paradox holding capacity, which is unconditional love, which is the healing for everything, which is what I call grace, which is most and more powerful. It's the most high, let's say, energy out of all the energy medicine. That's why I still teach energy medicine. If you want to, you know, we touch in on that, because for you to get to that takes some practice. That's why I've made available for $1 the introduction module 1. So like I said, go to academyforconsciousevolution.com and look for that consciousness literacy foundation. It'll be at the top of the page. It's $1. Just press it, pay $1. It'll give you the link to the school where you'll get all the information, the videos and stuff for module 1. And you don't have to cancel. You don't have to do anything else. You won't be charged anything else at a later date, whatnot. It's $1, clean. You're in the little platform. If by chance you wanted to do the whole program, you can message me and I'll give you the link to that. But other than that, it's a gift to start. It's just a little energy exchange of $1. I mean, you know. So it's not within that consciousness literacy. It's not, I don't go into the biblical stuff and all that. It's basically teaching you about fear literacy, fear of love, fear of unconditional love, how that connects to your physiology, your body, a little bit about spirit literacy, so these different states of consciousness. Anyway, it's a nice way to start if you've never met me before, or follow on wherever you're watching so that when I do lives, we can get to know each other. So, are we complete? Are we feeling complete? I've been going for a while. I don't even know how long. Feels like it might be like an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. Let me see. I don't even know how long we've been going. A while. I can't see. It doesn't tell me. A couple of hours. And we haven't even, really touched the surface, but you can contemplate this. So this is about the sacred threshold. So Lilith's gift to the body is the capacity to stand at the line, at the threshold. And so not just standing there, neither collapsing backwards nor being thrown forwards, right? Standing in the presence. So why that's important? Because we've got if we look at attachment theory, so what is a secure attachment? Right? Being able to feel it all and not get thrown out of whack, not get dysregulated and thrown into past or future. It's what the Shekinah energy teaches us. The Shekinah is in exile with Eve, in the world, in our body, in everything in this world, right? She is the presence of God in the world. And anything in the world is feminine. That's why men and women are seen as the brides of Christ or of God, right? That's a whole nother story. But everything that's birthed into this world is seen as the other side, right? So they're teaching us how to be able to be regulated, secure, being able to say yes or no, and discern when we need to say yes or no, right? Without all that stuff coming up. This is what they're teaching us. This is what they're teaching us. So to stand at the threshold, neither collapse, right? Neither go into fight, flight, freeze, collapse, fang dead, all the F's, and to know who crosses and who does not those boundaries. So if that's not enough to say thank you to her, I don't know what is. And what we've been taught is to say all the swear words, all the nastiness, all the degradation, the toxicity in the relationship, all the putrid, harmful ways of relating to those energies. And why is that important? I could spend a day, I could spend my life telling you there's so many reasons why. But for you today to know that the suppression of the feminine in these texts and in the world is a suppression of the feminine in you. So what is the feminine in the world? Shekinah. The presence of God in the world. That's what you're suppressing. I started with saying everything you know, turn upside down and back to front. What you were told is, good and glory and blah, blah, blah. Look in the world. Look around you and make your own decision to what's most true. So on that note, thank you for popping in, hanging around. I don't know how many of you stuck with me for 2 hours. But I can hear in my voice I need a cup of tea. And if one little piece of this landed gently, then my job here is done. If not, I'll keep coming back until. So with much love and great blessings, have a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And until we meet again, may the blessings be. Much love. And follow. And if you want the whole recording, you can go to my YouTube. Let me just see which one it's on. Cynthia Harrison is this the one I'm recording on this. Okay, much love. Ciao. Ciao. To work out how to turn everything off.